Hi, I'm Susan Foster. I actually work for the Ministry of Children and Family Development. I do early years community development, and we do a lot of programming around the early years that has multi-generation involved. And we're also really interested in maybe doing a multi-generational project. And it has been so hard during the pandemic because, of course, the elders cannot come out. So yeah, so just really interested to see what you've learned and see if we can apply it to the work that we're doing in the North Fraser region. Thank you.
That's great. Well, I will pass it on. We can move ahead a slide, and thank you for sharing.
Good morning. I'm June, and our agenda today is to walk you through the InterGenNS project. It's who and what we are, our guiding definition, our start and the findings of our journey so far, our supports and our future possibilities. We'll also engage you along the way so that we can learn from each other in this unique opportunity from the BC Council for Families. What is InterGenNS? And the NS at the end of our little name there stands for North Shore, because this was started out as it's a community project for the North Shore community, but we hope will be inspiring to other communities as well. So InterGenNS is a community seeded and grown project with the goal of finding what intergenerational initiatives exist on the North Shore, as well as establishing a community infrastructure to sustain existing programs and facilitate the innovation and development of more of these valuable connections, all with sound academic research, both as a foundation as well as a motivation. So a little bit about me and the story of planting the seed. I am a retired early childhood educator with a long time interest in intergenerational concepts, back as far as my undergrad days in a fairly new university called Simon Fraser. I retired in 2017. However, the germination of InterGen started in 2015 when I was a manager of parent and child resource programs and visiting a Mother Goose program we co-facilitated at a local North Van library. For those of you who might not know, a Mother Goose is a Canadian-made program originating in Toronto in 1986 with trained facilitators that connects young parents and their babies with each other and enhances parent bonds and language through songs and rhymes. It's typically provided in a once-a-week 45-minute session. And I know that BC Council for Families is sort of the mainstay of Mother Goose in the province of BC. So at one of these visits that I attended just to see how the Mother Goose session was going, there was a woman and her elderly mother on their weekly outing from her mother's care facility. They had happened on the program in the library and asked for permission to sit in and had been attending for a few weeks. At the tea break, the parents and the babies were interacting with her mother, and she said that this was the absolute highlight of her mother's week. Instantly, we all agreed that we had to try and arrange a pilot in a care facility. We found an eager care facility partner, and the care staff specifically chose about 20 residents to attend the first session, and those were residents who never had visitors and never got out for outings. A couple of the care aides from the facility attended to assist the residents if they needed help. After the very first 45-minute session, the care aide said they saw expression and engagement from some of the residents that they had never seen before. We all felt the significance of this initial 45-minute experience. The program expanded to 5 care facilities and 1 seniors program on the North Shore before COVID brought it to an end. It will be resuming when it's determined to be safe to do so. So this experience played on my mind. So it just had me thinking, what other activities like this are happening? Wouldn't it be great to have a community inventory of all these initiatives? Would a resource hub help to strengthen and develop these activities? What about a dedicated intergenerational coordinator to promote and support and facilitate intergenerational connections and collaborations on the North Shore? Is there a way to adequately measure the benefits of such programs? So in July of 2019, I put my thoughts to paper and I circulated the idea to 30 North Shore contacts. To municipalities, we have 3 on the North Shore. School districts, we have 2. First Nations, we have 2. Vancouver Coastal Health, the Rec Commission, and several social service agencies. The only non-North Shore contacts were the Simon Fraser Department of Gerontology and the BC Council for Families. I was both astounded and delighted by a positive response from 20 of these contacts. And I have to say that Lynn Joseph was one of the first on the mark to get in touch with me. In October of 2019, the City of North Vancouver hosted a brainstorming meeting, which led to the steering committee, which led to Simon Fraser suggesting a master's student collaboration to begin a foundation of research. And this is how we met our star, Rochelle. In March of 2020, COVID almost ground everything to a halt before we really had begun. But Dr. Chaudhry from the SFU Department of Gerontology and North Shore Community Resources, with Sue as our champion, persevered to access funding, and here we are. Not even 3 years from the germ of that idea. InterGenNS is a stellar collaboration of academic and community spheres with the dream of the North Shore Inventory, the Resource Hub, our coordinator, and all that is now a reality. And I have very cleverly created my very own ideal retirement volunteer position working in my community. Now I'm delighted to introduce Sue, and she's going to tell us a bit more.
Yeah, so I manage the community engagement and seniors programs at North Shore Community Resources in North Vancouver. And I have always been passionate about building a thriving, resilient, connected community on the North Shore. And I actually came to the position in March of 2019, and we all, March of 2020. And we all know what was happening then. It was crazy times. And I heard about this project that was going on and immediately felt like, oh, this is something I'm passionate about and I want to get on board with. And I've been involved in lots of intergenerational community, but one that's been a really key part of my life is being involved in summer camp. And I'm amazed at what happens in good community that spans the ages. And I've been involved in this for over 30 years. It has a fully volunteer, broadly intergenerational staff and camper group. Each week, a new team of 85 members go up and serve at the camp. And it's really fun. I always say it was one of the #1 building blocks in our family life, because I watched what happened for us as a family to be able to go and the interaction of all the ages that happen. And my kids would first start as little tiny guys, and they were affectionately referred to as camp rats, but it was an affectionate term. And anyway, I remember watching the lead guy from the work crew sitting down with my little guys and giving them a pop. And I said, oh, Jeff, you don't need to give my kids the work crew pop. And he just looked at me and he said, are you kidding me? Your kids just dragged the suitcases up the hill. And I thought, wow, I could never pay for that kind of mentoring and the back and forth goodness that happens as we have a mutual sharing of what we've got. And I was also so grateful for someone older investing in my boys with that kind of care. And at over 80 years of age, my friend Grace McPhee still worked in the kitchen at camp, and at home operated a boarding house where she housed students and made a meal every night for them that they enjoyed around the table. And I say she was a creative intergenerational housing advocate well before her time. My own background is in dietetics and seniors living in care. And I've also worked in stroke recovery, and I find it very rewarding to be a community partner on the intergenerational team. And now I turn you over to Rochelle.
Hi, everybody. It's so great to be here today and have the pleasure of talking with you all. A little bit about me is that I've had the privilege of spending ample time with my grandparents. Every weekend I was pretty much there. They were an integral part of my growing up. I got to learn, experience, share culture, practices, lessons with them that were entirely informal because that was just the way I was raised. I became very passionate about the importance of connecting all ages when I came to realize how fragmented our society was by age and how many people didn't have the interactions that I had growing up. Then I decided to continue my education and attend SFU for the master's program in gerontology to focus and learn more about these programs and connections and what they can deliver to our society in all generations. There's no surprise that my research focus is intergenerational opportunities and the impact they have on those involved. The InterGenNS project helped me on the research and coordination side of things with my own research and helped in turn with the project. The background that I have is in public health and community health, so I look at that lens as well when looking at these programs. So it's quite clear that we have many pillars going on in our project, and all three of us represent each one of these pillars, which is really unique. I represent the community engaged research side of things. Sue represents the community organization that's a partner with us. And then June represents the extremely active and inspiring community members. We all bring a very diverse knowledge to this team, and it's very community engaged at the heart, and that's what holds these pillars together.
You're muted.
Couldn't tell what the noises were in the background there for a minute.
I'm unmuted now. Thank you. So our InterGen steering committee is an intergenerational profile in itself and is a stimulating cross-section of municipal, academic, professional, and social service contacts, bringing a diverse and insightful direction to the project. Next. And our larger community group is a community table of over 30 plus contacts, and again, with a broad representation. And with every presentation we do, or every connection, this table grows and contributes ideas and resources and enthusiasm. So it really has snowballed the whole project by growing this community group. So Sue's going to outline a little bit about our funding now.
Yeah, we thought we would share a little bit about how we managed to fund this project, because this is always a question for all of us as we stretch and grow and do research in our own communities. So we started off with June's table, where Habib Chaudhry from SFU Gerontology joined, and he was able to secure a CIRI grant, which is a community engaged research initiative at SFU. And it's designed to be collaborative and promote participation, cooperation, social transformation, and knowledge translation. And it focuses on a reciprocal relationship between the university and the community working to solve real life problems. So that was our phase one, which you'll hear more about. And then you see underneath for phase two, we were able to secure a partnership through MyTax. And MyTax is all about empowering Canadian innovation through effective partnerships that deliver solutions to our most pressing problems. So together, creating meaningful change to improve quality of life for all Canadians. And these grants have a community contribution piece alongside the MyTax funding, which allows the partnership to happen with its many rich advantages. Sorry. And with a joint application, the community funders from North Shore Community Resources partnering with SFU and MyTax, phase two became a reality. And we were really excited about working with MyTax and what that offered us in terms of having Rochelle on board and all the great background research that we could accumulate and working together with academia and community. So we were able to apply. You can apply for 2 rounds of MyTax with the same master student. And so because phase 1 had produced such excellent research finding and great community interviews and connections, we started to work towards a 3rd phase, which combined someone working on the ground for the North Shore housed at NSCR alongside a continued research phase. And so for this phase, in order to come up with the community portion, we applied for West Vancouver Foundation's Transformation Grant, which supports local initiatives. And then we were able to use part of that money alongside MyTax to leverage the money that West Van community gave us. And COVID revealed many areas and aspects of social isolation, loneliness, mental health challenges, which made the timing really rich for a community transformation grant. So that's how we've managed to do the work we've done, and it's been a great journey.
Thanks so much, Sue. I'm going to share with you all a little bit about our trajectory in this project, starting from phase 1 to present date. So at the beginning, the whole point was to really understand and try and get a good picture of what the intergenerational context looked like in Canada. And so to do that, I went to the literature. So I went and I looked at a lot of the academic literature, also gray literature, which is any common knowledge source. So anything you can find online or in a book, you don't need special access for. And this is really important when talking about intergenerational programs, because the research is not at the same speed as the programs are in the community. So we wanted to capture that as well. And then I also conducted semi-structured interviews with 7 community organization representatives that run intergenerational programs in the North Shore during the COVID-19 context. So we're able to add that layer of their experiences and what they were going through looking at these programs during this time. Then we were lucky enough to continue the project onto phase 2. And we wanted to try and understand the community's experiences in a larger context. So to do so, we decided to come up with a community-based survey, which the entire steering committee created together and had to approve, which was really exciting because it was extremely community engaged. From then on, from the really interesting surveys that we received, we decided to do semi-structured interviews with these individuals because we saw the theme of vulnerable groups pop up. So really these programs trying to capture and reach out to vulnerable groups in the community in an intergenerational way. And then we also began to collect helpful tools and resources that organizations might be able to use pertaining to the development, maintenance, and evaluation of intergenerational opportunities. But we weren't really sure what we were going to do with it, but we just thought it was a great idea because it was a struggle that was mentioned many times. On to phase 3, which is pretty much present date. We literally just wrapped it up at the end of May, which is very exciting. And what we decided to do was think bigger because I think it was time. So what we did was a global scan on intergenerational opportunities. And this was a gray literature scan. So again, just those common sources. So I spent ample amount of time going through everything I could find online and any public source. And I identified best practices and innovative practices from that. I think we got a total of 114 programs identified globally. And then what we also did was we created a coordinator role with North Shore Community Resources, and they were able to reconnect and connect with local organizations through interviews and really just see how things were going, how we might be able to support. We also developed a program directory, which was one of June's dreams from the beginning, as you might remember her saying. Also the resource hub. And we also created an aspect, so like a whole landing page on the North Shore Community Resources website. And we kickstarted a community connector newsletter. So this was the most kind of community related aspect of the project thus far. There was a lot of background work that really got into it and created the foundation. And now we are starting to see those changes in the community. You might be thinking, where can I get these resources? How can I access these resources? Well, we'll talk about it in a bit. So we won't leave you hanging.
So what do we hope for the future now that we've reached this point, and we are literally, as Rochelle said, at this point now? We look forward to promoting InterGen North Shore more in that larger community group. You saw all those logos, lots of partners, and we will continue the steering committee. But what we want to do is continue to build and maintain this intergenerational program directory and resource hub with a coordinator on the ground, because there are lots of little initiatives happening, but if people don't know about them, it's really hard for them to connect. We also want to continue on the Connector newsletter, which we hope will be filled with stories of all different programs that really makes it come alive to our North Shore. We will continue to convene intergenerational North Shore meetings to implement, build, collaborate, and we want to be able to measure the impact well. And Rochelle has brought some tools to us through her research, and we're continuing to grow and looking at that. The other thing we want to really want to do with the resource hub and the program directory is to provide a place for resources and direction for the public and to support new initiatives. So our goal is that this coordinator on the ground could be a support to other programs in the community that are there already, but maybe have never evaluated their impact, or perhaps they're dreaming and putting new programs in place. Oh, questions about InterGen North Shore. Does anyone have any questions they want to ask right now? You can just pop up your hand if you do have one. Mike.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the sort of the goals from your going forward is to connect other communities with the same process you've gone through, and maybe just creating something more provincially as well, and just sort of to replicate some of the successes that you've had so far.
Yeah, that's a very good question, Mike. And we hope it will grow and expand. And if it's a good model, someone will take it and use it or expand on it. And so the North Shore Community Resource website that Rochelle referred to, will have the website up at the end, and any community can take any of those research results or resources that we have, or how we designed a community directory, and use them how they like in their own community.
I'm just seeing like connections with some people in my own agency of like, okay, maybe I need to connect them with you to maybe replicate some of those successes in other communities.
Fabulous. I think all three of us would love to engage with people.
Yeah, definitely. That's amazing. Thanks, Mike.
Yeah.
Any others? All right, we'll move on, and there'll be more time for questions later on. So we're wondering, for people that are here, what comes to mind when the word intergenerational is said? Rakshanda. Oh, did you have your hand up, Rakshanda? No?
Well, I work with a lot of seniors at the library. So when you talk about intergenerational, I think of my seniors, and I think of more engagement from the teens or from the children, and just families coming together at the library for different storytelling programs or craft programs. Yeah, I'm looking forward to working on something during the fall. Thank you.
That's beautiful, Rakshanda, and it's been fun to hear along the ways some of Rakshanda's dreams, because she is at the North Van City Library, so working alongside us in the community.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to the next slide, and we'll give you an idea of what we defined intergen to mean for our project.
So usually, intergenerational is thought of in terms of ages, such as seniors and children connecting, and usually in planned programs. So the vision from the beginning was for InterGens to embrace a really broad definition in terms of participants. So not only ages, but cultures, abilities, newcomers, varying circumstances. And in terms of connections, thinking beyond planned programs to events or facilitated gathering places The city of North Vancouver calls these community living rooms. So these might be community plazas or parks or wherever, and thinking of unplanned and the organic fostering of social interaction. So Rochelle's going to tell you a bit about some of our research findings now.
Thanks so much, June. Before we kind of kick in and really ground today's findings, I kind of wanted to just take the second to ask you all if you're willing to participate. Feel free to use the chat or raise your hand. What shifts in society are currently taking place or that have taken place that you think have really impacted these intergenerational relations? I know this is a very big question, but kind of wanted to kick us off. Yes, Mike, go ahead.
So this actually takes me back to when I was doing my degree, and it was about 10 years ago, looking at the agency I was doing my practicum in was a Métis agency, and the community planning for, ironically, the North Shore of the Thompson River and Kamloops here, making it more walk friendly and looking and organizing the community so it's a little bit with a disability lens and people that may have low mobility and things like that, and looking at where we could make that so, like, in terms of, is the bus stop accessible to the agency? Are the is the actual structures, are they people can walk through them without having assistance, things like that, and businesses are able to be, and also like looking at traffic patterns as well to see if there's going to be a rise in fatalities, if there's that. So looking at the safety planning of more and looking at through the lens of the United Nations sort of plan, and that for elder friendly communities or older adult friendly communities really as well.
Really cool. So the physical built environment, the way we as community members utilize the environment, feel welcome, feel able within our physical spaces. Really cool. Thanks for sharing, Mike. Linda.
Just looking at the picture alone, these young people walking along with their phones, and older seniors may have a phone and use them, but I think there's a different kind of dependence in different generations on the use of the phone. And so I assume that that would impact in some way. I mean, nowadays, if you don't have a phone and you leave the country and you can't do the Can app, I don't know what you do. I know that's sort of off the topic, but it's an example of the necessity of using cell phones, and I'm sure there's an effect there.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing, Linda. So even that technological dependence, digital dependence, and then that translating into the digital divide that we're currently experiencing between generations. Yes, Carmen.
I was just going to mention, yeah, and adding to that, like the social platforms, because with my youth, they're all on things like TikTok and what's that other one? I mean, there's so many. And a lot of the elderly have no idea or how to use them or access them and how to share information with families, especially because distance also plays a role. People don't live in the same home, same city, same place anymore. So that communication is being challenged. And then I was going to say one that's obvious is COVID has impacted us greatly with especially elderly being able to interact with their families, and younger ones. Some haven't even met new members in their families or anything. It's been very difficult.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing, Carmen. And that kind of like perfectly segs as a perfect segue to the next slide. And thank you everyone who shared and participated in that. So COVID-19, as Carmen was saying, I have a little bit of a different take on it, but it really relates to what Carmen was saying, is that I think it was a really big situation and a very like wide situation that impacted generational relations more than anything ever has to date. The COVID-19 pandemic also resulted in older adults being at the forefront of mass media, which was a huge change from the normal demographic that's typically reported on. And we also heard words like loneliness, neglect, abandonment, social connection, and these negative outcomes that were taking place with older adults like never before. Usually it's focused on their physical abilities, but really the emotional impact that was taking place. And really that mandatory separation of generations that happened, like Carmen was saying, that members haven't even maybe seen their families, they weren't able to stay in touch. And if technology wasn't up to date on either side, then their communication channels were disrupted. So these are really important things that were prevented during this time, and in some instances still are. And the fact that individuals who maybe don't have these relations within their daily life couldn't attend those programs that we're running because they were shut down. So it's really just important and really, I think, necessary to shine light on this issue. And even though these issues have been taking place for way too long and have been hidden way too long from mass media channels, COVID-19 really brought these issues to light, and how all age groups were impacted. So to take it a little bit further, I wanted to kind of dive into key social forces that are at play that really impact intergenerational relations, and really just ground why intergenerational relations are important and necessary in our daily lives and in our lives. So the first thing I want to touch on is age segregation. So older adults are the most segregated age group in North America, and young adults are becoming increasingly segregated, leaving very little opportunity for that interaction to take place organically. First, there's different types of age segregation. So I kind of want to take you on a journey of understanding the different levels of age segregation. So first is residential age segregation. So just age segregated housing defined by a life stage. So only a certain age can live in this specific area. Next is institutional, whereby chronological age is an eligibility criteria. So you're thinking like work, school. Typically, individuals are surrounded by the same age, roughly, or generation individuals there. Also spatial, so where the same space is not occupied by different generations, therefore face-to-face contact does not take place. And this results in generation social islands. So children go to school, adults typically go to work, and older adults typically remain in the community throughout the day, and they usually run their errands and do their outings during the times that old adults are at work and students are at school. So that just natural flow, kind of like Mike was saying, of people's passings throughout the day and their movement throughout the day don't typically take place like they used to. Also, there's something called extreme age segregation. So this takes place in homogeneous housing, like nursing home or assisted living facilities and retirement communities. So really implementing intergenerational opportunities within these spaces are super important, because individuals don't typically come in and out on a regular basis like a community per se. And then institutional and space age segregation results in cultural segregation, which is just the difference identified in language, dress, grooming, food, music, etc., based on age cohort, kind of like Carmen was mentioning, just these changes that kind of take place throughout generations. And this really translates into the generational gap or divide, which is the next kind of bucket here. And that just really mentions that the generations set their own trends that resemble effects of cultural age segregation. We're at a time right now which is super unique, and this is how I kind of think of it. We have 6 generations living at the same time. We have the silent generation, baby boomer, we have Generation Y, Generation Z, and Generation Alpha. This has never happened before, having 6 generations living at the same time. And it's quite sad to think that we might be with more division than ever before. So there's a really unique opportunity here to really connect all these generations in multiple different ways, as we'll talk about. And I just wanted to quickly mention that as well. The third bucket here is the fragmentation and geographical separation of families. So currently, due to globalization, there's an upward moving trend of mobile young adults moving out of their neighborhood, leaving older adult family members behind, which many of us can probably attest to within our own communities. Therefore, there's very little in-person or organic non-planned interaction between different generations and family members. They used to really take place and be the foundation of families. And also, the last one to mention is older adults are typically living independently. So 93.2% of seniors live in private dwellings, meaning that most Canadian older adults are aging in place. And typically we see this as a good thing. This is typically a positive thing. They're aging their communities. Like this is a great thing. We're on the right path here. However, 25% of older adults live alone. This increases the risk of social isolation, as it's the #1 risk factor among older adults who are living alone. So yes, it's important they're aging in place, but they're really at risk for social isolation. So just having these opportunities that they can engage in are extremely important. So therefore, older adults have other risk factors like living without family and changing family structures for social isolation. So it's important that they're not at risk of feeling these things, and in order to kind of combat that, intergenerational opportunities can play a role. So all these social forces that are mentioned here really result in a lack of understanding, the division among generations, that appreciation that's kind of lost, and that interest, that lack of interest, because they're not really interacting in a general sense and in an organic sense. And this results in really big health and social concerns, and the biggest one being ageism. This is on the radar for almost every social organization or health-based organization. I just wanted to kind of go over it quickly with everybody. And it's just important to note that this can go both ways. So it's not just like younger individuals are ageist towards older adults, but older adults can also be ageist towards younger individuals, and that's why bringing them together are extremely important. So those prejudices and those stereotypes can be blurred and removed. And there's a clear need for efforts to be put in place to link social networks with age integration in mind. Therefore, generations can interact, develop mutual understanding of the different needs of these different generation groups, and just really highlighting that these intergenerational opportunities can help offset these gaps in these social forces that we've been discussing. Okay, so to jump into the findings, I just want to quickly mention that all the information that I'll be presenting from now on is from the environmental scan that was done in phase 1, the interview data, survey data, and then the really big global gray literature scan that was also completed. So this is going to be super in detail, and I hope that you all find this very interesting and informative in your day-to-day work. So first things first, I kind of wanted to go over the types of programs that were identified, and there's quite a spectrum, as you can see here. So I'll start off with community-based programs. These take place in public settings, so like libraries, public gathering spaces, like youth centers, senior centers, that sort of thing. It could even take place in farms and community gardens, that sort of thing. And this was really, really important, there being flexibility for outdoor space in the community during COVID. So just keeping that in mind, because things like this can happen. So really just having that backup plan is really nice, and that being outside is super interesting as well. So also taking place in facilities. So that being long-term care facility, nursing homes, assisted living facilities. And these programs typically consisted of youth or young volunteers, like school students, university students, taking place in the facility itself as a service learning opportunity. So this is when they learn content in school or class, and they really bring it to a participatory approach. They bring it into practice with older adults. So typically they're focusing on that area in school. And then school-based programs take place in educational institutions, whether that's from like early learning all the way to university. And sometimes older adults would have a volunteer role and be more active in the community in this type of programming. And it typically aligns with educational or criteria, educational or curricula content. Co-located programs are super, super interesting, and one of my favorite types of programs. They're where there's services for really young students, so typically early learning, and then adult daycare or day programs under one roof. So this really creates an intergenerational environment within itself. And these intergenerational environments vary. Some foster a lot of interaction based on the architecture and just the flow of the programming. And some can actually be quite segregated even though they're under the same roof. So it's really quite interesting how this space can either promote or really take away these opportunities, and the role that the staff and the facilitators have in really creating these opportunities, right? So on to remote programs, which are super new to the intergenerational space, really started because of COVID. There were some pen pal type programs before COVID took place, however, really kickstarted after that. So really just keeping that in mind, remote programs. And actually a lot of individuals were saying, even when we start up again, like, I really want to keep these remote programs in place because you know what, we're actually reaching the most isolated individuals who maybe can't come into these programs, don't have the means, don't have the mobility. Some of these people are bedbound, and this is their form of social engagement and contact with people. So I just wanted to add that little tidbit there. And co-housing programs is something new I identified actually within my thesis-based research. And this is really cool. It's like a really big living community that has common house inside. So it's purposely built for families of all ages to live in this same sort of neighborhood. And they're brought together by a common house in the center. And this is where they can cook together. This is where they can have meetings together. This is where they can do activities. There's commonly like a community garden that everyone's a part of. So this is just a really new aspect that I wanted to add in here as well. And then home share programs. Some of you might have heard of Home Share Canada. And this allows older adults to open up their home to typically young university riding students who need a place to stay at a reduced cost. And there's an exchange that takes place. They're like a companion to them. They go run errands with them. They just spend time together, but they live in the same home. So it's really, really unique. And kind of the difference between co-housing and home share is that they're part of the same neighborhood in co-housing, but they don't necessarily share their home, but they can share common space. So it really gives that opportunity of choice. They can have their individual time, but they can also have that communal time where the home share is more kind of close-knit as they live in the same unit. So types of activities, there are so many activities out there, which is so amazing. And I wanted to kind of base them thematically here so we can kind of talk about them in chunks. So there's a lot of art focused activities, from like crafts to painting to like fiber arts, like very wide range of art-based activities. And they're one of the most high prevalent of activities that there are. There's educational focused activities, so through tutoring, mentoring, that sort of thing. And then there's ones that support instrumental acts of daily living, which are pretty much the errands that need to take place for one's day-to-day life. So that is go getting groceries, that's financial support, that's really just like sometimes companionship, those sorts of things. And then to move on to companionship or social interaction, some activities are just a mere telephone call that's every week. And that's just a conversation that takes place through an interaction. Then there's movement. So like dance-based yoga, Tai Chi type of programs that, yes, you have to keep in mind that this is for a wide variety of abilities here. So just making sure that there's those different monitoring that can take place. Different games. So from physical type games like cards to more brain games that take place either virtually or not. Then food related activities. So that's making food, sharing food, which is really unique to see as well. And then outdoor nature-based activities. So lots of gardening, horticulture, learning about that. And then technology. So either learning tech or taking part in tech as a part of the other activities mentioned. So to talk about the participant demographic, oh, we have a hand. Carmen, yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment too, like when you're saying all this stuff that they can share just like intergenerationally, that sounds like it could be intercultural as well. Like where elderly can share their cultural values and vice versa. There could be so much value in all of this.
Definitely. And that sharing, I don't know if this is helpful for everyone, but there's a theory called generativity. And what that is it allows for, it's that kind of intrinsic act for older adults to want to pass down and to share their knowledge, culture, values with younger individuals. And so I didn't want to add that in here because it's already so much information, but if that's helpful for you in whatever you're doing, maybe just mark it down, generativity, and Eric Erickson kind of coined that. So yes, thank you so much for that, Carmen. I hope that my little tidbit there was also helpful. To talk about participant demographics really quick, just who are kind of participating in these programs, maybe who we need to engage with more and who we're leaving out. So there's been an overrepresentation of women, and that's typically just because at this age they're more engaged in programming and in the community. So it's not necessarily a bad thing. However, it's important that we really target men as well. The younger participants and older participants are both from a wide range. So from 15 months to university students is quite large. And then also older participants, there's a 40-year age gap within there, which is really interesting. So there's a wide variety of ages that are being a part of this inclusion. So there was a really good job, I think, of including vulnerable populations within the literature that was identified. So residents of long-term care, older adults with dementia, Indigenous peoples, and those of low socioeconomic status. So these types of individuals were included. However, there was underrepresentation of males, like mentioned, individuals with poor mobility, persons with varying cognitive and physical abilities, non-English speaking individuals is a very, very big one. And then members of the LGBTQS plus community and newcomers. So I just kind of wanted to lay this out for everybody. If you're thinking of creating programs or you just kind of want to know what the status was for participants, this can be really helpful. So jumping into the outcomes, which is my favorite part, and really understanding why these programs are important and what they do for our communities. So first I'll talk about the outcomes for older adults, then the younger counterparts, and then the mutual outcomes, because that's a really important thing in and of itself. So this allows older adults to be active members in the community, voice their experiences, their opinions throughout their time, advocating for community and self in those programs that are participant-led and that really allow them to be an agent within the program. It allows them to create connections with the community, which increases social capital and community connectivity. It increases self-esteem, well-being, life satisfaction, quality of life, meaningfulness, and purpose. Declines loneliness, social isolation, as well as depression. Actively motivates lifelong learning. And for elders specifically, it really allows a space for them to pass on their cultural teachings and traditions, which connects to generativity, which links back to what Carmen was saying before. So as you can see here, there's like so many opportunities within here, not only within the program itself or the individual itself, but how it trickles down into the community. For younger counterparts. So this really allowed individuals to have an understanding and awareness of older adults. And this sometimes was the mere purpose of the programs, because these people or these children or these youth maybe have never interacted with an older adult ever before. So they were like, a lot of individuals had fear, were scared, weren't sure how to interact. There was trainings that had to take place to learn how to interact with these people or older adults. So really just keeping that in mind when talking about these changes for the younger counterparts. Teamwork and collaboration skills among diverse groups, so abilities, age, different ethnicities, that sort of thing. They were able to identify commonalities and similarities instead of focusing on differences, which took part at the beginning. Oh, they look this way, I look this way, I think this, they think that. And at the end, they were kind of more thinking as a we or a collective sense of commonalities there. Allowed for gendered and ageist stereotypes and attitudes to kind of be diminished. Viewed older adults as in a more positive light and capable than before. So there's a clear shift in perception that took place. It cultivates motivation to spend more time with older adults in their family and outside their family, which is really interesting as well. So it's a kind of a change agent that took place among young adults. So mutual benefits, which is I think the most important part. Intergenerational is really the interaction between ages and among ages. So it's this with, not at situation. And I think that mutual benefits are really important to highlight this. So meaningful relationships can take place. There's an increased sense of meaning within the community on both parties. Age-inclusive environment and context that's facilitated. There's mutual learning, or sometimes stated as co-learning, that takes place. There's bidirectional mentoring, even if the point of the program was for the youth or for the child to teach an older adult something, it does go both ways. There's discovering new interests, so things maybe they never thought of about before. They learn something through maybe a technology tool that now they want to run with. And then overall, there's this enhanced feelings of self-esteem, empathy, well-being among generations, and quality of life. So with all those positive things and important things that are said, there's also limitations, and I really want to highlight these as well, because I understand some of you might be experiencing these, or you might be interested in creating a program and you're kind of worried about what kind of barriers you might run into. So based on the literature and based on conversations with individuals, these are the 12 kind of barriers that are key to highlight. So there's usually limited time, usually based on the grants and the funding. There's limited resources also based off that. There's a lack of staff knowledge and awareness of how to run these types of programs in a comfortable kind of state. There's hesitancy for staff and management, because oftentimes there could be liability or health concerns or these sorts of things with these types of programs, which is completely understandable. But in order to combat these feelings and really understand and deal with this, training is extremely important. And there's a overall lack of training for facilitators, volunteers, staff that are taking place that really need to be brought forward in this type of realm and this focus. Transportation barriers in some regions or in some areas. Access to facility use and space. So if these programs are not taking place in a community center per se, but out of an organization that might not have the adequate space, sometimes this is identified as a barrier. Language, long-term funding, a lot of these are project-based or pilot project-based. So to continue the funding is extremely challenging. So this is not something that you're experiencing alone. This is a wide problem. Evaluation concerns. So individuals might not know where to go, might not know where these evaluations are, might not have the time to look for them, because usually this type of work is extremely busy as it is. And then length and longevity of programming. Of course, we want these programs to take place more than 6 weeks, but oftentimes that's not doable, but we want to get there. And then also kind of talk about, if they're only 6 weeks, how we can help facilitate these connections past the program status, right? How can we really facilitate these within our communities after the program? So some promoting factors that really should be acknowledged here is tech. So really using that as a positive tool is really important. It's something that a lot of older adults are interested in, and something that they want to learn more about to mostly connect with their family who are not here anymore. And this will really actively help close that digital divide that we see that's present. And it really allows youth to be an active member in that process as well. Not getting rid of that virtual remote audience, even though we're getting back into more person-based programming, because those individuals might not be able to take place in that or take part in that in-person programming, which is really important to not exclude them now that we've included them. Access and availability of guidelines, toolkits, resources, evaluation. This is a really big problem, and we're hoping that by providing these tools to you all, that this is a promoting factor. Training. So really including training for volunteers and staff, so they feel comfortable and able when they're supporting or running these types of programs, including diverse populations, and encouraging them to participate in your type of program or work in general. And having strong administrative support. It's really important that intergenerational ideas, contexts, models are integrated in strategic plans and are really in the center of the organization in order for the administration to really support these types of programs. If they're completely against it, then it's very hard for them to be incorporated. And one way to do that is really just honing in on generations within missions, visions, values, that sort of thing, that really allow that continuity of intergenerational within an organization. Partnerships, I can think maybe the one most important thing in this type of programming. It takes a lot of work, a lot of individuals to come together, whether that be you want to evaluate a program, you should go to academia because somebody there probably knows how to do it and they could be an intern, for instance. Co-located programs, how can we create a space like a community center, for instance, that allows generations to come together instead of having certain times for certain programs all the time that segregate ages, right? How can we bring that together? And service learning, how can we work with the schools, different unions in order to do that? Because that's a great opportunity in and of itself for co-ops or volunteer or that sort of thing. And then provide opportunity for once that's over for them to stay on, because these are connections that are built and they might want to maintain them too. It doesn't have to necessarily end there. And then evaluation. So just trying something, whether that's an entry exit survey, just something that provides some evidence that can really help when trying to get funding, because the funders are really interested in numbers, even though this is a more qualitative approach and programming is a qualitative in nature. Numbers do matter in this kind of regard. So any way you can collect them is really important. And then regular programming is seen as one of the most important factors. So even if it's not every week, just not changing it up too much is really important for participants. So just to end here, in an overall kind of what are great opportunities for growth is service learning, education at all levels from early learning to university. So really those collaborations between different organizations and institutions, grounding everything if possible. So any program you're starting up in a theory, so it could be generativity, for example, and this is even very helpful for when applying for grants, that sort of thing, if you have a theoretical basis. If you have any questions on that, feel free to reach out to me as well. Duration and frequency of program, of course, the longer the better, but really that regularity, and then blending more qualitative and quantitative, so numbers and feelings, if we want to just break it down, type of data in your evaluations is very important as well, because it is qualitative in nature, including the diverse community members, keeping that virtual audience and really opening it up sometimes to an outdoor setting, like I was saying before, because these things can happen again, like the COVID-19 pandemic related issues can happen again. So allowing a kind of safe space for that to take place, training and education of staff, and then really thinking of settings that foster intergenerational environments, whether that be the social environment, but also the physical environment of where these programs take place. So I know this was a lot of information probably, and I hope you found it helpful, but you might be thinking, okay, thanks for all that. That was a lot of information. That was a lot of useful tools. Like, where can we go from here? So I'll pass it on to Sue to teach you more about that.
So there are lots of helpful tools and resources, and some of the basics of our project, as we mentioned, are on the North Shore Community Resource website. And so you can see there's the InterGen website there. And of course, you'll be able to get these slides. And there's the program directory of what we currently have, the resource hub of what we have accumulated and put together from all of Rochelle's work, and the InterGen Community Connector newsletter, of which we sent the first one in June of 2022. And the concept of that is really to tell the stories of what's happening in the community, as well as where to find the resources.
Definitely. And for those interested, any sort of information that was shared today through the kind of long talk I had there, we have all of our reports also on this webpage. And we have any of our media aspects as well. We've done a few blog posts and some podcasts as well. So if you find that useful, this is exactly where to find that as well.
And there are a number of helpful websites, many of which Rochelle found in her phase 3 that are great to have a look at, have lots of ideas. So Generations United in the US, there's United for All Ages in the UK, Generations Working Together also in the UK. They've done a lot of work on this. Agile Aging Alliance in Euro, the Eisner Foundation in USA, and the I2I Intergenerational Society is a really good one in Canada. So you can peruse them all.
So since most of the knowledge part and sharing is done on our end, we kind of wanted to take an opportunity to hear from you all, if you're willing to share, what intergenerational opportunity has been the most impactful in your life. We all shared kind of what brought us here, And we kind of wanted to learn more about why you're interested. If there's been a personal connection, anything of that sort, feel free to type it in the chat or raise your hand. We'd love to hear about it. Yeah, Carmen.
Sorry, my comment was on something completely else. It was around research findings, which I'll talk about later.
Okay, no problem. If nobody wants to share or this doesn't sit well with anybody, we can totally move on. Okay, no problem. We might have something. Telbridge healing for intergenerational trauma in Indigenous context. That's what Mike said. That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Mike. Before we kind of got into kind of next steps brainstorming for us all here today, I wanted to ask if anyone had any idea of any other organizations or programs that they think would be helpful to share with us that we might be able to put on our pages, really update what we have so far, just share with everyone here today. If you want to type in the chat or say it, by all means. Just wanted to kind of share information while we're all together if possible. Yeah, Angela.
Hi, sorry, I am probably the only person here that is outside of BC. I snuck into this meeting. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I really appreciate it. This is really super valuable information for some projects that we are working on now. So here at our health authority, we are connecting intergenerations by setting up a traditional foods program. So with our elders that are living in place at Woodland Manor, which is a long-term care facility, outside of that building, we were able to seek funding and secure some funding to build an outdoor cook area.
Oh, cool.
It also kind of helps during these COVID times as well.
Yeah.
And with that outdoor community center, or with that outdoor cook center, we're hoping to have the schools come by. Also, there's an isolation between even the seniors in town, like the independent living seniors with seniors who are residing in the long-term care facility. So we just thought it would be a really great way to do programming. I myself focus on programming with children ages 0 to 6. So we thought this would be a great way to connect those generations as well. And of course, we're always working towards healing the intergenerational reconciliation for Indigenous families who've lost their cultures and traditions. But this is not exclusive to that, but it is a traditional foods outdoor cook area that we hope to expose the community to and welcome everyone to participate in. Thanks so much. And thanks for letting me be here.
Wow, that's super cool. Thank you so much for sharing that, Angela. Yeah, Rakshana.
Hi. Yes, so my colleague is leading a program which she's doing for Home Movie Day in October. So we will have seniors who can bring in their home movies, and we'll have the teens who will be helping them to digitize those movies, and then we'll have like a home movie day where everybody can come together and watch the movies at the library.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, I guess we can move on then. So last but not least, oh, June, you have a question or your hand up?
I just thought of something that that I was involved in when I was working at North Shore Community Resources. we used to volunteer regularly at the North Shore Food Bank because different organizations would take resources. And one of the booths that was always at the food bank, and probably still is, was a table with fresh produce from the community garden. And the women that used to man that booth said that young people would come by and say, pick up a handful of rutabaga or beets or something and say, what the heck are these? You know, like, what do I do with them? And then seniors would come by and go, oh, goody, you know, beets, rutabagas. I have this great recipe for stew or soup or something. And so the women that used to man the booth at the community garden said, to the senior people, can you please bring in the recipe? And so the seniors started bringing in the recipes that they would use this produce for. And then the women at the booth handed out the recipe to the younger people when they said, what the heck is this? What do I do with it? They could take the beets or the rutabaga or whatever it was away, something that wasn't as common for them to use or to even know about, and they would have the recipe on how to use it. So there was a way that the generations linked through this connection.
Wow, that's so cool. And it brings, like, food seems to be a really big focus, especially now after COVID and meal sharing kind of stopped.
Yep.
And Allison mentioned that too about the outdoor kitchen. That's super cool that we're thinking about food more than ever. Oh, Bella, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to share what we are also doing at Parent Support Services every second Sunday of September. That's Grandparents' Day. So we organize events, and we welcome all families to join in and celebrate Grandparents' Day, and of course bringing the members of the family. And because we're a provincial organization also, so other parts of the province are also organizing that simultaneously with our provincial organization. So that's what we do. And also before COVID, we organized this Galliano Nature Camp where kinship care families, grandparents raising grandchildren, they join our nature camp events in Galliano in partnership with Galliano Conservancy to learn about the nature, and also having opportunities for them to get together, and also having a respite opportunities while children are learning. The grandparents are also connecting with other grandparents, and it really helps them to see about families coming from kinship care families. So yeah, and also with some other language specific circles that we have advisory committees. They also organize workshops where they bring the parents and the children to be resource speakers to talk about where they're coming from, the gap between culture and also between generations, so they learn from each other and support each other.
Wow, that is so many great things that you have going on, and a lot of different kind of tiers, like focused on family relations, and then focused on respite as well as nature, like learning with nature, and then the cultural teachings as well, to kind of close that gap within family, but then outside of your own family, but families that can kind of connect, which is also really cool and interesting. Thank you so much, Bella, for sharing that. So the last activity that we kind of have planned is more of a brainstorming, can maybe help you on your next steps, kind of where to go from here. And the first question is, what intergenerational opportunities do you think are needed? Like, especially right now, especially based on learning what there is out there, what's mostly out there, what kind of gaps do you think need to be filled, and with what focus maybe? I know it's a big question, but anything you can think of. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, for me, it's very specific with the family that I'm sort of supporting right now. It's just really understanding the difference between on-reserve, off-reserve resources, and working through systems, whether it's medical or medical needs of their grandchildren, that sort of thing, and trying to go through assessments, or if it's looking at child welfare system and understanding the historical processes that have been exclusionary for them as well, or have been taken culture away, and how to increase those outcomes to be more positive. Because I'm finding a lot of frustration with the family I'm working with, unfortunately, in understanding their role.
Yeah, that makes total sense, and just merely the systems that it seems you have to be engaged with and go through in order to really understand and see where your family that you're working with kind of fits into that, because it doesn't seem like that is an easy process. Definitely, that would make complete sense. June, is your hand still up, or are you
Nope.
just nope?
Nope.
Okay. Sue, go ahead.
One area that we've been looking a little bit more at lately because of the climate changes has been emergency planning, and intergenerational connections are really important in that, because if you know your neighbors in your building, then you know who needs a hand getting out of the building when there's an emergency, or what shared equipment you have between you all, or who to knock on their door and check if they have a fan when the heat dome comes. So I think that is a particularly relevant area to our country right now, in our province, and an area we can look at for building connections.
Definitely. Emergency planning is such a great one. Yeah, Lynn?
I don't want to take up too much time because I see there's lots of other hands up, but I've worked a lot with advisories, both in community and in the school districts. Most school districts have an Indigenous Educational Council, but the importance of that in having voices within your community from a broad range of generations. And I just think it might be something that agencies might be able to look at to establish within their agency, or somehow within a group of agencies. Thank you.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, I do not want to pronounce this wrong. Siranush, is that right or wrong, or?
Correct. Yes. Hi.
Okay.
Siranush. Yes. Hi.
Hi.
My point of view, working with children and families and being an immigrant here for past 25 years, raising my kids without grandparents, one of the things I realize is children grow up without being with grandparents for moving out of their origin country.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I missed being here was not being connected with elderlies. Maybe the very first time you need to have a common activity for a person like a young mothers, like cooking, baking, something in common, then we get connected with elderlies, then you trust and you make a connection, then you can bring your child, and this can be mutual relationship, and this will bring benefits to both sides. So I believe this is a missing part, that children grew up without even knowing the meaning of grandparents, unfortunately, here.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes because in your case, for instance, you moved so far away from your home country, right? And now you want to create this relationship or have this relationship. If it's not possible with the original grandparents, sometimes there's like fictive grandparents that take place.
Mm-hmm.
It's called fictive kin, where you kind of adopt a grandparent or grandchild.
Yeah.
And having the cultural lens is really important to that, to create a safe space and a unique relationship as well. So that's a really good point you brought forward.
So for example, I had a connection with a family who had a younger child when I arrived through, I guess it was through VCC, that they were volunteered to come and help an immigrant family with younger children. So, and still after 25 years, we are connected together and we see each other. This can be an elderly who likes to be connected with an immigrant family in terms of learning English and culture as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think for question 2, we kind of did share efforts in place within your organization that bring generations together already in the previous slide, but if anyone kind of failed to mention something that was in their own organization, feel free to share at this time. But everyone did a great job of sharing kind of what's going on. Also, to move on to question 3, what challenges are you experiencing or anticipating in experiencing if you're going to develop an intergenerational program, or you currently have one running in your organization? I know Mike kind of shared some of his challenges he's experiencing, but is anyone else willing to kind of share what they've experienced or they think they might experience?
Money.
Yeah, Carmen.
I think the biggest one for me working with the school board is bureaucracy. Yeah, there's so many hoops that you have to jump through to get anything done or understood, like in regards to the research and stuff, which why this is outstanding. And we're working closer with Vancouver Coastal Health, thank God, to bring programs into the school. We do one intergenerational one, which I think is amazing around parenting. I think we need to bring elderly in more, but we have youth and parents talking, crosstalk around parenting to get them to understand negotiation and what youth are dealing with today that parents don't seem to understand, that they're facing, that they've never understood with the internet, etc. The one question I did have, I wanted to have the opportunity to ask before you guys go, is when you do the research and you're doing the evaluations, when you said like depression decreases, isolation decreases, etc., do you see, is there any way to measure alcohol and drug use in the elderly where it goes down if they have less isolation, less depression, more interaction and social interaction? Are they using less medication? Is their health factors getting better? Are they not using substances as much? Like, I'm wondering if that's something that can be measured or was even allowed to be measured or looked at.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. So just to make sure everyone understands, I didn't actually evaluate these. I went into the literature and identified evaluations that have been done. So that is kind of the playing field that I was working with. But that being said, I never looked at medication changes or substance abuse changes or that sort of thing. So that can definitely be looked at. It was just not identified within the review I did. That doesn't mean it's not there. So it's definitely a place to look and inquire in the future. And if you need help like organizing that or getting involved in that or whatever, I'm more than happy to help you out. Okay, Bella, yeah, go ahead.
This may be too late to ask this question, Rachel, but I'll ask it anyway. I'm just curious. The composition, the demographics of the steering committee, are there representation from the youth in the steering committee?
No, not in the steering committee. There isn't actually representation from youth. We have myself, who's the youngest member, and then everyone else is either close to being a senior, I think, or a senior. But that's a really good point. That should be reflected within our steering committee.
Yeah, that is a good point.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Bella. Sometimes when you're in these things, you don't see those changes that would be extremely useful. So definitely we will mark that down and work on that.
I think what's great though is that a lot of people on our committee are involved with youth, children, and early years.
Yeah.
And so only a few of us are retired. So I really think that the conversations that we have involve existing programs and that we can see and understand from a library point of view or from a community agency point of view, that's been really helpful.
Definitely.
It's a good
So I'm
point,
just
though.
aware of the time. I don't know if there's one more question, or I haven't seen anything in the chat. Thank you for people who are sharing ideas, this community of care that Joel is sharing. There's things that Mike has shared within Kamloops, the Langley Meals on Wheels. And, you know, I think of these programs when I was in the school district in Vancouver, we realized that the grade 7s were having a really difficult transition into grade 8. And it was all those big grade 12s that they were all worried about. So guess who got behind us? The 7-Eleven stores. And we created a program called 7-Eleven. And the grade 7s met with the grade 11s in the year before they went to high school. So they had a buddy when they got there. Like there's some really, and we got funding from 7-Eleven. I don't know if it still exists, but it was a fantastic program. So I think everything you're hearing and the way that this is being shared and all the information, we will share. People have been asking, yes, we can share the PowerPoint. This has been recorded. We can share this information. There's connections. And oh yeah, and it is interesting, Joel, you're mentioning about the grandparents raising grandchildren. And that's an area that I've been interested in and working in, actually from the school district point of view as well many years ago. So we'll keep that in our sights. And we just really, really hope that Rochelle, June, Sue, and I and the others on the committee, we're all committed to continuing even though the funding has ended. We had a coordinator on the ground who did the work with the newsletter and that funding has ended. So we're in that limbo and we really, really hope that we can continue to work at this. Linda, I noticed you have your hand up.
You always forget. Following up from what you said and what related to Mike, I'm on the steering committee and represent CFUW, which is Canadian Federation of University Women on the North Shore. And one of the things we do is advocate for women and children. And it was clear late recently that there was a problem with grandparents who were raising their grandchildren because they weren't getting the same funding from the government as parents would. And so we had a resolution that came from BC. And we feel that some of you may be aware there's been a change in the funding that grandparents can get related to raising their grandchildren. And we think our resolution may have had some effect on that. And I just wanted to also follow up from what Lynn said, because I was thinking, I was a high school teacher in Vancouver. And I remember when I was young, you just went to high school. But over the years, there's been more and more understanding that the transition from elementary school to high school is really difficult. But people didn't think about those things 50 odd years ago. And so there's been real progress in understanding that these life-changing moments in life, going from elementary school to high school, even high school to university. And so the schools have really made an effort to try to make it easier for kids to make these transitions. And as I say, intergenerational things are starting to be something that people think about. When I joined this committee, I had really little background in understanding all these new programs that are there. And it was really exciting for me to become involved in this because I don't have that background as a retired teacher, but I sort of have a different input to the committee. And so just sitting today here, all the programs that all of you are involved with, it's really, really heartwarming to understand that these things are happening in the community.
Thank you so much. And Donna, and we've got, like, we're down to the minute. I sound like a CBC reporter.
So
Donna,
I just want to thank,
sorry, Donna
Sorry.
just had her hand up, but she's just unmuting quickly. And then
oh, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention to Linda that the University Women's Group is also working in conjunction with Fairness for Children Raised by Relatives, an advocacy group.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. June? Excuse me.
Yes, I just wanted to thank BC Council for Families for giving us this opportunity to share about the InterGenS project. And you'll see that our names and email are on the slide now, and feel free to connect with any one of us. If you have feedback or resources or suggestions or exciting ideas, we are eager to hear. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you, June. Thank you again, Rochelle and Sue. It's been wonderful to hear again and to share, to have it shared out in our community. I'm sure we'll have responses. I sent out the original contact if you want to go through my email and just find out this information if you aren't able to write it down. And I'll find a way through Rochelle to share the PowerPoint, and we'll have the recorded session up on our website for BC Council for Families. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erica. We didn't run into any techie stuff. Oh, stop record. There's a good one.
Thank